Betsy Pollock, I know, is dancing for the Senior Center. I think Gloria Rudish is dancing for the Jennifer Lynch Committee Against Domestic Violence, and I believe Shulan Chang is dancing for the Teen Center. So I'm not.
Cara Brood is dancing.
Oh yes, for what?
I think Beep.
Oh, okay. Anyway, people should check into that. That's always fun, and I'm sure there's still tickets available.
Right.
A week from Friday is Veterans Day, and the town, as always, under the able leadership of Mr. McGurdy, is going to have a celebration of remembrance. I believe it's at 11 a.m. Right here in front of Town Hall, pending weather.
Right. And Mr. Kleckner.
Mr. Chairman, could I just mention a couple of things? First of all, I'm pleased to report that the Government Finance Officers Association, otherwise known as GFOA, has awarded the town with its annual Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, which is granted to municipal entities for budget presentation. We've gotten this several years in a row, but we never take it for granted, and I do want to acknowledge the really significant efforts of Melissa Goff, our Deputy Town Administrator, and Austin Faison, our Assistant Town Administrator, for putting this really great budget document together. Can I just say about that? I'm happy to see Austin's in the back of the room. I'm sorry Melissa isn't here, but this is a lot of hard work goes into that budget book, and it really has gotten better and better over the years, providing more information to those of us who are trying to figure out the intricacies of the town budget. And I want to say how much I appreciate all the hard work, so congratulations on the award. They didn't miss a beat in the change from Sean Cronin to the new regime. On a somewhat related topic, I believe that performance management, which is a process of measuring data and with the expectation of improving performance, is something we've been working on periodically, and we decided through some funding in the budget that I prioritized in the current budget, had a very significant training program last week. We had nearly 40 department heads and upper-level management participating in the several-hour training process. And a lot of it relates to the budget and the process we go through in the budget to document our needs. And we're looking forward to continuing that expertise among our department heads and hopefully integrating that within the budget, among other things. Thank you.
Okay. We're expecting Selectman Green shortly, but I think we'll start. Is there any public comment? Anyone wish? There he is. Okay, so let's move into the miscellaneous calendar. We have the minutes for October 5th, and I note in our calendar it states executive session. It was not an executive session. It was an open session. So those will be open session minutes for October 5th. That was a morning session. And then October 18th and the 25th. Anyone have any?
I had a number of corrections on the October 5th, which I've given to Kate.
Right, as have I.
I had some edits to the 18th and the 25th, which I've passed on to Kate.
Okay, so I will move acceptance of the minutes of October 5th, 18th, and 25th. All those in favor say aye. Selectman Daley?
As amended.
As amended.
Yeah, aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And chair votes aye. And the next item is question of accepting a grant in the amount of $19,500 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection as part of the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program. Mr. Faison.
Good evening, Austin Faison, Assistant Town Administrator. This is a recycling dividends program where the town is awarded points based off of our recycling program. Specifically this year, it was for our yard waste, mandatory recycling, and household hazardous waste programs. And through a formula and in a little bit of additional funding, it adds up to $19,500. a more detailed explanation can be found on B2 concerning the breakdown of what items hit for the point structure, but the vote is presented to you to accept this grant.
Questions or comments?
I'm just wondering, are there a lot of points we could, additional points we could get that we're not getting?
There are, and some of the things that could move forward are tied to our potential automated trash program. So there's always more work to be done. It's a very detailed list of different items that we can pursue, but these were the ones that we got for this year.
Okay, there are no further comments, questions. I'll move that we accept the grant in the amount of $19,500 from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection as part of the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program under the Recycling Dividends Program and Small Scale Initiatives Grant. That's quite a mouthful. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Next item is a question of approving and authorizing the chair to execute Chapter 40B Technical Review Assistance Grant application relative to another comprehensive permit regarding 111 Cypress Street.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr. Chair.
Steinfeld.
Thank you. Allison Steinfeld, Planning Director. 111 Cypress has submitted an application for a comprehensive permit to construct 99 units at 111 Cypress Street. And consistent with that standard procedure, I'm here requesting authorization to apply to the state for a $10,000 grant to engage a 40B consultant.
Right, now thank Selectman Franco and his efforts at maintaining that level of grant funding for us. And I'll also note that there's a site visit tomorrow morning at
455 Harvard.
at 11 a.m. or 10 a.m.?
I think so. 10 or 11, I'm sorry.
Yeah, of another 40B that's being applied for at 455 Harvard, and there's another one coming in the door?
Yes, there's another, several more. Let me see. There's
One that hit us today, right?
Yes, we were aware of it on Babcock Street. They'll be applying to mass housing for 62 units.
And we'll be having a public hearing on that.
Right.
some
They
point.
have, right. They have, and
And
that's
then there are some others that might
others
be
that are,
coming.
right, still in consideration.
So I will accept the chair's thanks for the funding for this program. I will pass on the thanks to Senator Cream, who was a key advocate in that battle on the state budget. How many 40B applications are pending right now? How many proceedings are before the Zoning Board of
There are
Appeals?
currently 4, although Pudding Stone has been delayed, extended till April 9th. But and JCHE will be coming in any day now, at 62 units.
So how many, let me ask it a different way, how many unapproved 40Bs, sort of applications that are either before the Zoning Board of Appeals have been filed and the proceedings haven't started yet, or the application is in hand?
Okay, I have the notes
Okay.
there, but there are currently 4 before the Zoning Board of Appeals. 111 Cypress is awaiting a public hearing date, and that will be before the ZBA within a few weeks.
That's 5.
JCHE is coming in at 62 units. We're going to be
That's
taking...
6.
Right.
Then Babcock Street will be 7.
Yep.
And 1180 Beacon.
But that's in the count already.
No, that's still before...
No, 1299.
Oh, right, 1299 Beacon is still pending before
That's 9.
455 Harvard.
So we're right around,
40, well, that's one of the 4 that's currently,
That's in
yeah.
the
so
count.
we're in the neighborhood of 10 with rumors floating out there for additional.
Right.
The point I'm driving at is this town is under siege from 40B applications. And I've said before and will continue to say, I support affordable housing. I think it's a lofty goal. I want, my vision for the community is a welcoming place for people of all income levels, all types. I want it to be and remain a great place to live, work, and raise a family. But in order to achieve that vision, proactive planning is necessary. We need to be able to envision, make sure the services, the roads, the infrastructure is there to accommodate more people, more bodies, more units, and 40B doesn't allow that to happen.
If I may say, we're dealing with three different thresholds at this point. The 10%, of course, that once we issue permits for 346 more units, we will have hit the 10%. However, anything in the pipeline until that is still subject to 40B, and so that's another reason why everyone's rushing to get in. There's also the 524 units. Once we have 524 units that are pending before the ZBA, we can administratively hold off on some of the hearings. They're still protected by 10%, but at least it will give the staff and the ZBA some breathing room. They can only have to deal with 524 units at a time.
Okay, and remind us how the HPP plays into this. That's in front of...
Right, that's the third
Right.
threshold.
The third threshold is the HPP, which has been approved by the town and submitted to the state. We're awaiting the state's approval. I expect that the HPP will be approved. Once it's approved, we have to, once we deliver 131 units in a calendar year, meaning 2017, we can stay accepting applications for that calendar year. So there, I've worked out various.
For that count, so let's say.
It's only, it's,
So let's say we hit it in October. We only get 3 months relief?
we have to work out the regs on that. It's,
That doesn't make sense.
right, a lot of it doesn't make sense.
So
But,
HPP, for people who may not be familiar with
Right.
the acronyms here, is Housing Production Plan, which is something that this town engaged in a lengthy conversation to get to. And that's what the planning director so eloquently described.
so once we hit 130, once we deliver 131 units, and that's possible in 2017, we will get some variation of a year's relief. So all these are operating, and it's very hard to speculate, of course, what units will be delivered. We continue to work to make each project the very best we can within the neighborhood. Quite honestly, the impact in the SHI is secondary. We want to make it a good development, and if that means reducing the number of units and reducing the number of units on the SHI, we feel that we've done our work well.
Okay, with that said, I'm going to move that we approve and authorize the chair to execute a 40B technical review assistance agreement application relative to the comprehensive permit applications submitted regarding 111 Cypress Street. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Selectman Daley? Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll be back soon on 455 Harvard.
And the last item in our miscellaneous calendar is a resolution declaring November 17th as World Pancreatic Cancer Day in the town of Brookline. We've been asked to do this by Lauren Murata, a resident of Francis Street, who was unable to be here, and I happen to have had relatives struck by this terrible disease, so anything we can do to raise awareness. So the resolution that I'm asking the board to vote states that whereas in 2016 estimated 53,070 people in the United States will be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, one of the deadliest cancers, and 41,780 will die of the disease. Whereas pancreatic cancer surpassed breast cancer this year to become the third leading cause of cancer death in the United States and is projected to become the second leading cause by 2020. Whereas pancreatic cancer is the only major cancer with a 5-year relative survival rate in the single digits at just 8%. And whereas when symptoms of pancreatic cancer present themselves, it's generally in the later stages, and 71% of pancreatic cancer patients die within the first year of the diagnosis. And whereas 930 deaths will occur in in Massachusetts in 2016, and whereas pancreatic cancer is the 7th most common cause of cancer-related death in men and women across the world, there will be an estimated 418,451 new pancreatic cancer cases diagnosed worldwide, and whereas the good health and well-being of residents of Brookline are enhanced as a direct result of increased awareness about pancreatic cancer and research in early detection, causes, and effective treatments, therefore be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen designate November 17th as World Pancreatic Cancer Day in Brookline. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Thank you. The next item is an kind of item we normally do in our miscellaneous calendar, but I thought this one is probably the largest, among the largest contracts that certainly during my service on the board we'll be approving. I thought we would do it in our regular calendar. So, Mr. Quigley, can you introduce your team? This is regarding the devotion school.
Good evening, Tony Quigley with the Building Department. With me tonight, we have from HMFH, Mr. Vasilius Valeas, Mr. Pip Lewis, and from Shama Design and Construction, we have Jonathan Hurst. And the question before you tonight is consideration of change order number 5, which is guaranteed maximum price number 2, in the amount of $60,066,197. And with this, if it's approved tonight, this is basically the balance of the work. Recall that some time ago, June perhaps, you approved GMP number 1, which was roughly a third of the project. This is the remaining 2/3 of the project. And the reason it's a change order, just to sort of elaborate, it has to do with the methodology by which we're delivering the project, which is Chapter 149A, which is the CM at risk methodology, in which we, for various reasons, the general contractor, in this case Shama Design and Construction, was hired prior to construction to add expertise to the project. So we've already have them under contract, so that's why this is a change order. It's not a change order in the traditional sense of the word, just so that people can understand that nuance. And this is all of the, as I said, all of the balance of the work. We accepted file subbids on 4 October 2016, which is roughly half of that dollar amount. And Shama then bid the balance of the non-trade work. And so if approved tonight, the project is on budget, and I've confirmed with Mr. Hurst that as of now we're on schedule, and the project is going very well and very quickly in my estimation, and so far things have gone quite well out there. And I'm suggesting that you don't necessarily need, if you vote the change order, it's part and parcel to the list of file subbidders, because that's on the basis upon which the change order has been based, so we wouldn't need a separate vote on that.
Oh, okay, so you're just looking for one vote
On the change order.
on the change order, and it's, so we don't have to follow the structure in the
Right.
calendar. Okay. Any questions from the board on this item? Selectman Daley?
Well, I just wonder if,
comment.
since Mr. Hurst is here, if we can hear a little, I know there were some initial concerns from neighbors and about parking and things like that, and how's all that working out? Noise, parking, et cetera?
Well, we do have a large contingent of workers on site right now, anywhere from 60 to 90 on a daily basis. We have, because of the phase of the project, we're able to accommodate a large number of vehicles within the site fence, and we do have some reserved parking along Stedman that was taken out of daytime use because of the construction, and so we've been allowing some of the workers to park there until we need to move them. for truck traffic and that sort of thing. So we do continue to get concerns through Tony's office. We address them as quickly as we can. We try to be proactive, and we encourage people to speak up if there's, if we're not being good neighbors.
And how about the noise? I imagine now that people are it's getting colder and people have their windows shut, probably that alleviates some of the issues.
Yeah, I don't believe we've had much concern of daytime noise. I mean, we avoided the worst would have been driving piles, and we avoided that by pre-drilling, augering all the piles. So we do have some vibration.
That was a decision that was made specifically because we were in a tight urban area.
Absolutely, you'd have had constant hammering, which would ring out for blocks for 3 months straight, and that's a lot to ask people in a neighborhood like this to put up with. So, but we're we field concerns that go through Tony's office and try to be as proactive as possible to be good neighbors.
Great. Well, I want to thank you and Tony and the architects that we're delighted that we're on time and on budget so far.
Right.
Yes, and again, in my opinion, both the architect and contractor are doing a great job so far, and the architect is recommending this change order. And I also would be remiss if I didn't, we are getting a lot of feedback from neighbors. There's no doubt about it, because it's a tight urban neighborhood, but we're addressing every comment that comes in. And I also would be remiss if I didn't mention my colleagues in the town who have been very supportive and out there on a moment's notice whenever we have issues, whether it be DPW, the tree warden. My colleagues in the town have really been unbelievable. And of course, a lot of thanks has to go to all of the boards and commissions, you volunteers who put all your work into that.
So remind me, what's the target date?
We'll complete in July 2018. If this is approved tonight, we'll complete in July 2018 for occupancy in September.
Wow, okay, cool.
I just want to ask about this new process to advance a capital improvement of this size. Are we happy with this, the what is it, 144A process, or are we having second thoughts about pursuing it for future capital projects?
I think it would be project specific. In this case, it lends itself well to a project of this complexity, and I don't think we could have done it another way successfully with this particular project.
I would add that, I mean, just what he was saying about, what Jonathan was saying about augering these hulls rather than just drilling. And there's a lot of things these guys who deal with this stuff all the time have been able to help us think ahead on this project. So, and it is a pretty big and complicated one involving demolition, maintaining the old bit of devotion that's there and working around that and everything. So, I think it has worked out very well in this case.
Again, I think it would be project specific. For smaller or less complex projects, I would not recommend this, but certainly for a project that's a complexity, absolutely.
Okay, so I will move that we approve change order number 5 in the amount of $60,066,197 for work performed by trade contractors, non-trade contractors in connection with the renovations and additions to the Edward Devotion School. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Green. Aye. And the chair votes aye. At least I haven't done that too much lately.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item is the Brookline Music School lease and the question of approving and executing a 20-year lease with the Brookline Music School located at 19 to 25 Kennard Road. Who's here for that? Come on up. And Ms. Dunn? Or Mr. Buchheit? Don't be shy.
Hi, my name is Tom Corcoran. I'm co-president of the board at Brookline Music School.
Okay. So, Ms. Dunn, you going to tell us about this?
I can talk a little bit about it because I've been talking with people at the music school for a while about this one. As some of you may know, my own daughter was a student at the Brookline Music School for many years, and some of you may have had kids that took some classes there. But it provides, I think, a really wonderful program that unfortunately we are not able to provide through our regular curriculum. And so this is a lease of school-owned property. It's a house, as many of you know. It's at the Lincoln School, but I think they actually there's a value added to our own curriculum on music, and so it's a nice thing to do. They like these long-term leases. Maybe Mary Ellen wants to say more about that, because it enables them to do some planning, do some fundraising, and do renovations where they need to.
So just to sort of also inform the Board of Selectmen, this is actually picking up a action that began in 2009 with special legislation authorizing the town of Brookline to issue a 20-year lease to the Brookline Music School, and then through a variety of negotiations and then through the override vote, there were some discussions, and so the lease kind of stalled and in terms of its being executed, and so that's part of, if I bring note to the lease, part of why it goes back. The start date is actually 2014, not current 2016, is because the Brookline Music School has been occupying the space while we've been finishing out negotiating this lease and updating this lease. I'd also like to make the selectmen aware that this is, the Public Schools of Brookline does have its own music program and offers lessons, and so this is actually a compatible companion to our music program, as it resides in the Kendrick House on the Lincoln School property. So this is what you have in front of you, sort of a culmination of probably a year and a half of sort of reassembling a lease and picking up a lease extension that began in 2009, got stalled in 2014, and here we are in 2016 to complete it and have it come to fruition in 20 years hence.
So maybe John can answer this question. Why is this a lease extension? It appears as though this lease goes back to 1994, and this is just a 20-year extension. Why not do a whole new lease?
Well, I'd just like to reiterate that, so the former town council did a lot of work on this, and I picked it up later on, and I think we decided that all of the relevant provisions in the original lease were still, I think, still applicable, and it was an easier way to do it, to extend it, modifying a couple of the provisions, but essentially the insurance provisions, a lot of the boilerplate that's typically in a lease are in the original, and those remain in effect.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Therefore, I'll move that we approve and execute the 20-year lease with the Brookline Music School for the property located at 19 to 25 Kennard Road. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the music school, we thank you as well.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item is the question of authorizing the filling of the following vacancy in the Planning and Community Development Department. Community Development Administrator. Ms. Steinfeld.
Yes, thank you,
I haven't
Alice.
seen you in a while.
Allison Steinfeld, Planning Director. I want to publicly acknowledge and thank Gail Lewis for her 37 years of service to the town as Community Development Administrator. I want to wish her the best of luck, and I'm here seeking your authorization to fill the position.
Okay. You will, of course, do your best to obtain a diverse applicant pool and use all your personal connections in addition to what HR does for you?
Absolutely.
Can I also add, this position handles CDBG grants, which relate to youth activities, activities that have an impact on minority residents, impact on residents of public housing units. I hope that in looking out for a pool of applicants, you take into consideration someone who has the ability to work with these different groups effectively, not just someone who has the technical skills.
Absolutely. That's a very important consideration in any person we hire for this position.
Well, there's no question that Gail had a grasp of the minutia of the CDBG regulations. So it is a pretty complex area, and I'm sure you're going to have to try to find somebody who's got some familiarity with those regulations. Is that your goal?
Absolutely. That's critically important that someone has a grasp of the HUD regulations because they're extraordinarily
inadvertently, so.
Absolutely. Gail actually left us in phenomenal position. Also, I know that Joe Viola, Assistant Director for Community Planning, is extraordinarily capable, and we've already engaged someone familiar with our program to provide part-time assistance.
Perfect.
Okay, so I will move. There's just
Aren't the applications due soon for the upcoming year? Yeah, I think they are. I'm sorry, the CDBG applications. I meant not the job applications.
No, we'll be starting up very soon.
Yeah, okay.
But I can assure you that Joe is extremely capable. Also, our new housing planner is very knowledgeable about block grant regs as well.
So I'll move that we authorize the filling of the vacancy in the Planning Community Development Department of the Community Development Administrator. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next item is a question of approving changing the name of the Brookline Commission, from the Brookline Commission for the Disabled to the Brookline Commission on Disability. Ms. Allaire will appear to present.
Good evening. As you said, I'm Sarah Lynn Allaire, Chair of the Brookline Commission for the Disabled, and I'm here to request a name change on behalf of the commissioners. The reason we're requesting the change is the current language is really outdated, and according to some people, staff at the Mass Office on Disability, for example, it is actually disrespectful to people with disabilities. The disabled is labeling that emphasizes disability, and it also seems to indicate that the prime component of a person's identity is disability. The Mass Office on Disability prefers the phrasing or the wording person with disability rather than the disabled. Then there's the for the disabled. That seems to suggest a paternalistic attitude toward people who are helpless. There are 52 commissions on disabilities in Massachusetts, and they have various names. Brookline is one of only two who have wording, the name wording that is this outdated. So we really need to get this change made. The most common name is Commission on Disability, and that's the name that most of the commissioners voted for. So it would be Brookline Commission on Disability. One preferred Brookline Disability Commission just because it's a little easier to say, but he was outvoted. And so we chose Brookline Commission on Disability. So I do request that you change the Brookline Commission for the Disabled to Brookline Commission on Disability.
Okay, I don't think any of us have any intention of wanting to
Right. I'm happy
insult
to be
anybody.
supportive, but
Yes.
I do have one question. I'm wondering if we actually need a bylaw change. Are you in the bylaws under the old name? Because that would have to go to town meeting perhaps at the next
Yeah.
town meeting, but I don't know.
When I, asked Mel's office staff, they didn't seem to think so.
So
Yeah.
this is a commission that's actually set up by state statute,
Okay.
which town meeting accepted that provision of state law.
Okay. So it-
Many years ago.
Okay, so that title
So-
is not,
We would be prevented from changing the title.
all right,
Many communities that call them different things.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with you then.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make a comment very quickly, and I wanted to compliment you because I've heard very, very nice things about your abilities as chair and the way you run meetings. I haven't not observed them myself, but so it's total hearsay, but I wanted you to know what it is. It's very, very, very complimentary.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'll move that we approve changing the name from the Brookline Commission for the Disabled to the Brookline Commission on Disability. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley.
Aye.
Selectman Franco.
Aye.
Selectman Heller.
Aye.
Selectman Green. Aye. And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
The Tree Protection Committee. This is a committee that is being set up pursuant to a town meeting warrant article from the fall. It's taken us a little time to get this going, but in the able hands of Selectman Heller, we're getting it going. So Selectman Heller.
Okay, yes, you appointed me as the chair, and then I immediately went off to California for a few weeks to be with my grandson. So that accounts for most of the delay here. I apologize for that, although my grandson is very cute. So the charge to this committee is to look at the warrant article that Richard Murphy, who was the petitioner, citizen petitioner, had drawn up. And the committee is supposed to be members chosen from the public and appropriate town committees and boards with the necessary skills and expertise to provide tree protection in the town, including whether there should be a zoning or a general bylaw amendment. Supposed to report back to the town meeting in May. So I look for people who were on various boards and commissions, but also who would have some knowledge and expertise in this area. So we have an excellent committee. You want me to read the names?
Sure.
Okay, so Clara Batchelor from Parks and Rec, Harry Boers, who is from the Green Space Alliance, Bob Cook from the Planning Board, Liz Erdman from the Tree Planting Committee, Ken Goldstein, a former selectman and former chair of the Zoning Bylaw Committee, and we need that zoning perspective, Richard Murphy, who's a citizen and the petitioner of the original article, and Roberta Schnorr from the Conservation Commission. So I feel very, very good about this committee. I think it's a lot of really good people. We will start meeting as soon as possible. I'm waiting for us to approve this, and then I'll set up the first meeting. And our first, one of our first jobs will be our first decisions will be to make a recommendation on whether it should be a zoning article or a general bylaw.
Mm-hmm. Questions, comments? Looks like a good committee. So I'll move that we approve the charge of the committee and a slate of membership as described on page 11.1 of our packet, which Selectman Heller read the list of names. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. A little update on the Baldwin Project Oversight Committee.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, this matter is not quite ready for your approval yet, but we didn't take it off the calendar tonight just to create some awareness and explanation. So this board did designate Selectman Daley to serve as the chair or co-chair of the committee. Selectman Daley will serve as co-chair along with a member of the school committee and the building commission.
Yeah, and we should say David Pollock is going to be the school committee member and Janet Fearman, the building commission.
Right. And so we do need to make a few tweaks to this this committee, and it will be coming back to your calendar, I believe, next week. And at the same time, we will be proposing a charge of a committee and a slate of membership for the high school expansion project, which I understand Selectman Heller may be interested in. So that'll come up next week.
Everyone else took a step back.
Ms. Khan, I'll recognize you.
Thank you very much. Janice Khan, town meeting member from Precinct 15. I live on Craftsland Road, and I've been a 40-year resident of the town. And I rarely come before this board, so I appreciate you letting me speak. The comments I had prepared were about the charge and composition of this oversight committee. And I'd like to be able to at least give my thoughts as you go through, because now that I see that you're still in process, to maybe give you some thoughts to think about. And the reason I put these thoughts together is because there's been no really direct engagement of residents around Baldwin in this process. And no meeting at Baldwin, for instance. And so I'd like the charge to think about more than just size of the project and the infrastructure needed for traffic to make it work, and to really look at some of the broader issues that really didn't come into the discussion earlier, since we did not have the opportunity for that public engagement. And I know you had plenty of public engagement, so I'm not saying that, but there was no specific outreach to the residents around Baldwin. And in fact, no notice until about 6 weeks before the actual vote that Baldwin was in fact back on the table, because we didn't realize that. So I just want to put some context into Baldwin, as you think about this site and this project. In the 1990s, the town redesigned Sewell Recreation Center. Many of you may remember this. At that time, there was an exponential rise in the number of kids participating on recreational soccer teams, and a real need for a regulation-sized soccer field for the traveling team. And so the soccer enthusiasts lobbied very hard to create that regulation-sized soccer field in the backfield at Sewell. And that attempt actually failed. And why? It was because of a beech tree. There was a strong effort led by Shushu Merrill, whose love for Brookline and whose generosity of spirit is greatly missed, to protect and preserve a large, unique, and quite beautiful specimen beech tree. But the story had a happy ending. The tree was preserved, a smaller field was built, and some years later, a more appropriate site was found to build the regulation-sized soccer field that the town needed, and it was put at the Cap Leaf Dump on Skyline Park. So I don't know why the site selection for the ninth school came down to 3, in my view, deeply flawed alternatives. But I do know that making decisions under pressure when we have a way to buy time until a more appropriate alternative becomes available is often a mistake. And the alternative that we have is a perfect near-term temporary solution, and I want to emphasize the word temporary, while we wait a few years longer to see how the school population develops. And now that we know that there's a 5th 40B project in Coolidge Corner alone that's entered the pipeline, that part of town will need even more classrooms, clearly. So the old Lincoln has many short-term, near-term advantages. First and foremost, it's the ninth school that's already built. It's been specially renovated to serve the needs of a K-8 population. It will be available sooner than any construction project the town undertakes could possibly be ready. And the buffer zone can be drawn in a way that relieves student enrollment pressures in many, if not all, school districts that we need. But let's get back to Baldwin. So trying to fit a 4 or 3 section school, K-8 school at Baldwin site is like Cinderella's stepsisters trying to fit her into her tiny glass slippers. They might be able to squeeze in, but it would be painful to move around wearing them. And there were other good uses for Baldwin that we could have, and indeed have now, without spending $80 to $100 million to build there. For example, we now rent space in multiple places for our Brookline Early Education Program, known as BEEP. We could consolidate those programs at Baldwin, saving that money for other needed uses in the town. And it's the only site that already has playground facilities for very young children, because the very popular Sewell Early Childhood Center is located at Sewell, and the Brookline School's Staff Children's Center, which is for infants, toddlers, and preschool children, is currently housed actually at the Baldwin School. So when I suggested to a member of the school committee before the choice of Baldwin was made that the BEEP programs might be consolidated there, I was told that parents aren't going to want to deal with all that traffic. So to me, that defies logic. Parents with children in BEEP aren't going to want to deal with traffic, but the parents of students in a K-8 program that is many times larger and therefore will generate much more traffic apparently would be fine doing that.
Well,
So I'd just like to say that just like waiting a little longer on the soccer field led to a win-win for the town, I believe that given a little more patience, we can come up with a much more appropriate long-term solution for a ninth school. And I just really urge this board and this committee, this oversight committee, which is really supposed to look at the feasibility of making it work. I really urge everybody, to have the political courage to wait. Thanks.
Thank you. There's no vote on this item this week. I'll just say that we just went through a 4-year process of selecting a site, and there are uses for the Lincoln School already programmed for the next probably 5 to 10 years. So I don't think that's a solution, and we kind of went through all that stuff in the process. And I'll also disagree that we didn't engage with the community. We didn't have a meeting at the Baldwin School. We had a meeting in South Brookline where there were a lot of Baldwin folks, and we had a meeting at the Pierce School where there was a lot of Baldwin folks. There were meetings, a public hearing here with the Baldwin people, abutting Baldwin, came out in force. We heard from them. We received petitions from them. We received petitions from abutters to all the sites. So I think that's all I'd like to say for now. Okay. Next item is economic development updates and requests. Ms. Bruton, going to be discussing the annual storefront survey. And
so, Kara Bruton, Economic Development Director. I'd actually like to table the first item, the storefront vacancy survey. Keep your night a little bit shorter. The information you have in your packets is pretty much right. There's just a couple of things I want to double check. So maybe we can do that another week.
Okay.
Second item, the Small Business Saturday. So businesses, especially in the Coolidge Corner area, have in the last couple of years teamed up together to try to promote Small Business Saturday, which is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. This is a program that started a couple years ago in partnership with American Express, and they hand out free bags and stickers and do social media campaign. We have been asked as a town this year to participate by having a formal proclamation that in Brookline, the Saturday after Thanksgiving will be Small Business Saturday. So that actual proclamation language is in your packets, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? I'll encourage everybody to shop local. We have a lot of great shops here that can compete with the best.
I would like to know, though, because it's tough now that it's quarters only, when are we going to get that app so we can, is that operational so we can park?
That is a great question.
Mr. Faison. It was supposed to be a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
Austin Faison, Assistant Town Administrator. I just sent the Town Administrator a quick email about this earlier today. Due to some implementation issues with our back-end company, Duncan Solutions, and Passport, this project has been delayed. As of right now, it's about 2 to 4 weeks out. But in the meantime, we are trying to get individuals from Passport out here to meet with the business community to introduce the program to them so they have a better understanding of how they can utilize it with their customers.
I had to start going to my bank to buy rolls of quarters.
We have credit card machine, some of the newer meters, so I know it's unfortunate, but it is coming. Thank you.
Okay. So I will move that we adopt a resolution proclaiming November 26, 2016, Small Business Saturday in Brookline. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye.
Thank you. The next item is the First Light Festival, which this year is December 1st.
That's a little later than usual.
It is. It is a little bit later.
Well, that's good, though, because often, the last few years, it's been on.
It's been a town meeting.
Town meeting was on, and it was hard for us to participate.
Yes. So hopefully town meeting won't go that long into December.
Well, if it does, it won't be that night. We already know it's going to be December 7th.
So December 1st is this year's First Light Festival from 5 to 8 p.m. This is the second year where the business community has not only done all the fundraising themselves, but also led the process and done 95% of the work. This is an event that used to be the business community, kind of migrated to economic development a decade ago, and is now fully back in the business community.
I will say that's an excellent opportunity to shop at the small stores in Brookline.
Yes,
A lot
exactly.
of them host music and dance and various things that are fun to go around and see. And
Yeah, so there's a couple dozen events at businesses throughout. The schedule will be online in a couple weeks at firstlightbrookline.com, but it's not up yet, the current one. So outside in the public way, which is why we're formally here tonight, is things you've seen before. Our local DJ Magic Mark outside CVS at Beacon and Harvard, the ice carver that Chobe Hoy sponsors on Webster Place. We've closed that first block down for a couple weeks. And then the fire department often brings a fire truck into Coolidge Corner. So that's because it's in the public way. We just want to make sure that you all know about that and are okay with that. And then secondly, wanted to remind everybody that there's a photography contest of everything in Brookline called Brookline Life. This is the third or fourth year that they've held the photography contest. It's all voted on Facebook, and we've gotten some great photos. What we do is we ask anybody can submit a photo of anything in Brookline. Votes happen online on Facebook, and then the winner of the photo, we're able to use the photos for Brookline website and any materials that we need, but the winner gets a handmade puzzle of the photo for them as a winning prize. So it's a fun thing, and we all get the advantage of having updated photos as well.
Cool.
And last thing, Ross Miller is an artist in the region. You might have noticed the holographic film banners, the sparkly ones that moved in the wind last year. So he's coming back this year. We're reusing those banners. We have saved them. We're able to reuse them. And he's building on to that. We think there's going to be an installation right in the heart of Coolidge Corner, above two street lights at Beacon and Harvard Street, in conjunction with DPW. We're working with them and with the T and everything else. But Ross has a great track record of working with communities and understanding all of the public concerns as well. So more to come, but we're expanding our public art as part of First Light. That's all I have.
Okay. Any comments?
No, it's a nice event, so it's good to take in some of the. I know usually the senior center chorus sings at the arcade.
They will be at the arcade, and also perhaps perhaps the last time you have the opportunity to see our health director at the arcade.
Oh, cannot miss Alan Balsam singing "Blowing in the Wind."
Well, I'm happy that at least I'm going to be able to attend for longer than I usually am because of the later date. So that's maybe it's welcome from my perspective.
The Brookline Music School folks that we saw earlier tonight with their lease, usually they have a number of their students playing at different locations.
Mm-hmm. They do.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bruton.
Thank you.
Okay, now 8 o'clock, we've noticed we're only 15 minutes late or so. A public hearing to review FCC Form 394 regarding a transfer request received by the town seeking the board's approval of an assignment of the RCN cable renewal license from Yankee Cable Partners to Radiate Holdings, Inc. Mr. Faison.
Good evening. So this is a public hearing, so if the public has any questions, they will be entertained. But for this process right now, our outside counsel, Peter Epstein, has approximately 12 questions that we need on the record to be asked of RCN and legal representation that's here. So Peter Epstein is here along with Tom Steele from RCN and Seth Davidson from Mintz Levin. And I was thinking that they could have the dialogue here on the record, and hopefully they get through it quickly for everyone. And if you all have any questions, feel free to interject. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Epstein. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Good evening. Peter Epstein. I'm your special counsel on cable TV matters. As the chair mentioned, we're here tonight to question Yankee Cable Partners, LLC, which is the parent of RCN. RCN is the transferor in this transaction. And Radiate Holdings, which is the transferee. This is a hearing that's required by state law. This is a transfer of the RCN renewal license. You've been through this several times before. Several years ago, the license went from RCN, ownership from RCN, to Abry Partners. And when was that, Tom? That was 2010. So 6 years later, we're back. It's a very similar transaction, but the state does require that the Selectmen, as issuing authority, conduct this public hearing, which is within 60 days of the submission of the FCC Form 394, and once you've conducted the hearing and asked whatever questions are asked, you'll have basically another 60 days to render a decision. I think you know that you received an FCC request from RCN and Radiate back on September 7, 2016, regarding the transfer. That was supplemented 7 days later by the $100 filing fee. So that September 12th date is the effective date. That started the clock. In essence, the Commonwealth has 4 criteria for the board to consider when it is looking at this transfer, and that is the transferees. So you're more concerned here with the transferee, which is Radiate Holdings. It's an affiliate of TPG Holdings, which is, I believe, an investment house. So you're interested in the transferee's financial capability regarding this transaction, their management experience, their technical expertise, and Radiate's legal ability to operate the Brookline cable system under the existing cable TV license. And as you recall, the town has 2 cable TV licenses. One is held by Comcast, the other is held by RCN. The current RCN license is a renewal license. It was granted by the Board of Selectmen back on April 28, 2008 for a 10-year term. So you basically you basically have, I don't like gut, doesn't sound like, you have another 2 years before you will have to then go through the renewal process with RCN. I do have a number of questions. I'll try to make this brief, but perhaps would you gentlemen like to introduce? I was going to ask the questions and then have a representative of RCN or Radiant come up and answer them. So perhaps you gentlemen would like to come up and introduce yourselves to the board.
Good evening. My name is Thomas K. Steele, Jr., I'm Vice President and Regulatory Counsel. I've been coming to Brookline now for almost over 20 years in cable matters, and so it's nice to be back.
Right.
I'm Seth Davidson from the law firm of Mintz Levin, representing TPG and Radiant Holdings. I just want to acknowledge also I'm accompanied by my associate Ari Moskowitz, who's also been involved in working on the transaction.
Okay. Thank you. So I had a number of questions, and I'm going to start just for the record.
Can I interrupt a second?
Sure.
You're going to ask questions regarding financial capability, for example. I assume that you've already done some investigation and looking at the financial statements and financial history to support whatever questions you're asking. Is that the case? How does this process operate? We don't have Form 394 before us.
Yes.
And we're going to be asked to approve this. So
yes.
I want to know what is the process that you've gone through besides these questions that
Sure.
that back up.
I have looked over the Form 394. There are a number of documents in the form. And to your direct question, some of the financial information has been redacted. So I have some questions about finances, but I certainly am not in a position to state that if the selectmen grant this transfer, that there's going to be nothing adverse about that. I don't believe that's the case. I believe we're in the same situation. It's similar to the ABRI. But when I ask the questions about the redacted information, I believe Mr. Davidson, it is his responsibility representing the transferee to satisfy the board that his client does have the financial wherewithal to complete this transaction. That's part of the purpose of these questions, sir. Do you have anything to add? All right. Anything else? I mean, I can go through, and then we can certainly.
Well, I hope the questions are fairly detailed because just asking, do you have enough money? Is not
no, I understand. I understand. No, the first question is, and again, this is the one of the 4 state criteria, which is for the transferee, which is Radiant Holdings, to, in essence, prove to the Board of Selectmen that it has the financial capability to assume control of the Brookline cable system.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, so let me just, by way of a little background, so TPG, which would be the ultimate controlling party after the transaction, is a private investment firm. It's been around for more than 2 decades. It is one of the largest private equity investment firms in the country, with over $70 billion of assets under its management, compared to current ABRI has about $4.5 billion managed assets under its control. With respect to this particular transaction, it will be financed through a combination of new debt and equity capital contributions, primarily from more than 75% of which will come from TPG-managed funds. Those same funds have additional $8 billion in uncalled capital commitments available to TPG. There will also be smaller equity contributions from equity firms affiliated with Google, a company called Dragoneer, and also from certain members of the management team themselves will be investing capital. So that will be the financing. They've also arranged for a $150 million revolving line of credit to handle any future liquidity needs, although I can say that the company's expectation is that the revenues produced by the system will generally cover its operating costs, and the equity line is there for expansion investment, not for necessarily for day-to-day operations. So we believe that it's a much deeper pocketed company than ABRI, has the arranged for the financing, combination of new debt and again over $500 million in equity capital contributions, and with the belief that these properties, including the one here in Brookline, can be effective competitors to Comcast, continue to grow these systems, and put money into them to get money back out of them in terms of return for their investors. So.
Thanks. So just following up, in this binder, which is the Form 394, in Exhibit 5, I think it's A, there is a sheet that does refer to available capital of $8,776,000,000. Again, I think part of this is that, as you know, the Brookline system itself has long since been built. There have been some upgrades. So how you analyze this, and we could talk about the overall purchase price, which is?
The total purchase price is $2.25 billion. $1.6 billion of that relates to the RCN properties. There are also a separate group of properties in Texas, also affiliated with ABRI, called Grande. They're entirely in Texas, and those are being purchased at the same time. There were two separate agreements, but it's all being bundled together in the future. In fact, that's one of the benefits, is that the two companies, while under the common control of ABRI in the past, have operated more separately. Together, they will now be operated in a way that they will be able to draw on their volume to get better deals when they buy programming, better financing arrangements because of their larger size.
And is this a cash deal? Is it assumption of Yankee debt? Is it both?
Well, it's both. The new debt is being used to pay off all of the previous debt, and then, as I mentioned, another $500 million of the purchase price is coming in capital equity investment from largely from TPG-controlled investment funds.
Okay. And can Radiant certify that that purchase price will not have an adverse effect on RCN subscribers in Brookline?
Yes, there's no expectation this will have any adverse effect. In fact, again, the expectation is that this will be a largely transparent transaction from the standpoint of the viewers and the subscribers here, in that the system will still be operated by the same people, same day-to-day operations. It will still be RCN Telecom Services of Massachusetts that will be the franchise operator here. Again, the expectation is that the systems are sustaining today and will continue to do so in the future.
All right, so how many subscribers do you have in Brookline?
About 3,200.
3,200. And has that been pretty stable?
Could you come to the microphone?
Sorry. I had just asked Mr. Steele the number of cable subscribers that RCN has in Brookline.
It's around 3,200. It's been stable, up and down a little bit, but right around. That's a pretty core number. We've been sort of at that number for a while.
Selectman Daley?
Yeah, my question is, so often when one company buys another, they use that as an opportunity to trim their workforce to make savings, and I'm wondering, if that is your plan here, or if it will largely be.
No,
what I'm trying to get at is how responsive will the company be to people who have service problems, et cetera?
Again, there's no, there will be no changes in personnel. Systems will be managed day to day by the same people, both overall and here in the Massachusetts area. Tom Steele will still be here working with the systems. There will be no changes in that regard at all. Again, the goal here is not to pull anything out of these systems, but rather to put something into them to make them more effective competitors against Comcast.
So concretely, employee losses will not be a factor here.
Correct.
I think that's a fair question. Correct.
So you've said a couple of times that you're going to invest in the system. Can you give us some specifics as to what we can expect if should we approve this license transfer?
One thing I want to add to the prior question, and it relates to this question as well. In 2010, when Abry Partners bought RCN, a huge commitment was made in a competitive environment to improving customer service. Prior to that, a lot of our customer service was outsourced to the Philippines. Everything came back to the United States. Hundreds of more employees were hired. Unfortunately, not here in Massachusetts, largely in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. But the attention was focused on customer service, and the investment has been made. And I'm encouraged by the fact that the same management team, the people that I work for now and have been working for under a contract that Abry had with Patriot Media, they're cable veterans, they're our CEO, they're our CFO, they're our COO, and they'll continue to run the system. And their commitment will only grow with added resources to further improve customer service. And the second, even though we're here tonight to talk about a cable franchise transfer, a big part of our business, as you well know these days, involves broadband and internet access services. And it seems that in Brookline, the appetite is insatiable. So we're always trying to improve the speeds and improve that aspect of our service. And so even though it's technically not before you tonight, one of the areas that we began as under Abry to do is to improve the system to go to an upgrade that's called DOCSIS 3.1, which would allow internet access, residential internet access at a gig, which is a lot more than I'll ever use. And
that's a technical.
Right. Yeah. It's quite a gig. If you have a gig, you have a lot. And the purchaser here, TPG, is committed to following through on that and improving in that area as well as working on ways that we can improve the cable service as well. But increasingly, you sit there with those mobile devices and everybody's got something going, and the capacity for internet speed and access is something that will be a lot of our attention as well, and continue to be.
What about availability of service in town? The current situation is where if RCN is not currently in a building or in a structure, you potentially have to pay to bring it into the multifamily dwelling.
Under our renewal, we will provide service to homes where it costs $750 or less to reach, and if it's more than that, the customer has the opportunity to pay the difference, if you will. I think we've had only one person take advantage of that of late, but yeah,
Not a popular program.
We're always looking. I'm sorry.
Not a very popular program if only one person's taking advantage of it.
No, I mean people typically would go to Comcast as opposed to us and stay with Comcast or take the dish or do whatever they do. But we're always trying to grow our footprint. And within Brookline, we've been adding home. We add homes all the time and add buildings all the time here in Brookline as best we can within the parameters of the return.
So what does it cost on average to bring service from the middle of the street into a unit, into a building, where it doesn't currently exist?
The biggest expense is when you have underground service.
Right.
The aerial, we're pretty much serviced any aerial access unit we can service effectively, cost effectively. It's when you get in the underground, you run into situations where you're digging up sidewalks and streets and repairing the sidewalks and restoring them, the streets. And we're also having issues with right-of-way access, cutting across driveways, and people giving us right-of-way across private easements. It can be nightmarish in a relatively urban setting like Brookline. So, but we do the best we can. But a lot of those homes, we also run into issues with the building owners who are not anxious to see us come in and build, and our obstructionists when it comes to access. We've had help from the town in getting past those obstacles. Thank you very much. But still, some of them are problematic.
So with that question is related to the third criteria that the state mandates, which is why the transferee believes that it has the management experience to assume control of the Brookline system. Now, we've talked about personnel, but it is the management experience of Radiate, not RCN, that this question addresses.
Again, so the day-to-day operations of the system will be managed by the same group that Radiate is contracting with the Patriot Media folks, just as Yankee did previously. So that will be the same. In addition, the Patriot will have members of the board, will have a representation on the board of Radiate, which it gives them an additional role to play that they did not play with under ABRI. So the experienced team from Patriot that runs these systems, very long experience within the cable industry, will be investors in the system. They will be part of the board of Radiate, and they will be running the day-to-day operations as they have in the past.
All right, and in your Form 394, it did identify some personnel. I don't believe it identified some of the local staff, Tom, the general manager, Jeff. So I think it would be useful to the degree that this is a similar transaction as before with Patriot, for a follow-up for Radiate to write to the board certifying that it will continue to use local management, and frankly, I would name that local management.
We're prepared to do that.
All right. I would ask one question, and it's a general question, which is today the board may know, people may know that the whole industry is changing greatly. There's a migration to mobile devices. Some people would question the viability of fixed infrastructure. So my question is, why is TPG buying RCN in 2016? What is the impetus? Look, I think it's great. I think having competition is great, and I think it's been good for Brookline. I lived here for many years, and I had RCN, and I appreciated that. But there is a question, why are you making this investment in 2016? What is the impetus?
Well, I think the belief still is that the cable infrastructure is still, and the broadband, upgraded cable infrastructure, broadband plant is still the best platform for, not only for traditional video services, but for many of the new services that are coming online, whether it be a Netflix, a Hulu, some of these other services that are provided via a broadband connection. You may be able to use them wirelessly within your home. You may be able to take them on your mobile phone. But it all comes back to that centralized cable plant infrastructure. You don't see Comcast, you don't see these companies abandoning their plant. They're trying to grow their plant because it provides the platform on which all the other services are provided. And I think TPG looks at this as still a great opportunity, and the RCN systems being very well managed and run systems today. This is not a reclamation project. This is something where they can come into a good facility and build on what they have.
So I appreciate that. This is an investment house, and I'm not trying to be objectionable. This is an investment house making an investment. So I assume that TPG believes that buying RCN is going to be a profitable venture, notwithstanding some of the migration away from these fixed infrastructure systems, and we don't have to get into how you make money, but a concern is certainly cable TV rates. And as the board knows, we don't control rates. If we controlled rates, we could make some conditions here, but we don't here. So the fact is, here in Brookline, you do have competition. You have two vendors, and hopefully that is enough to control, put some drag on increases. All right, I'm going to go on to the...
Excuse me,
Sure.
I want to ask a follow-up to that. We might not control the rates, but I think that we have a right to know, and the residents of Brookline have a right to know, if you're investing all of this money into this venture, I would expect that you would look to increase the rates in order to get a return.
I think, as with most cable companies, the rates are reviewed typically on an annual basis. There's no plan in place for Radiate to increase rates as a result of this transaction. To the extent that outside of this transaction, there are costs that are going up for the industry, whether or not those end up driving a rate increase on an annual basis, that the whole industry faces that. But there's nothing related to this transaction. The transaction is being financed in a way that they do not intend to rely on rate increases to finance it.
Can I ask one other question, going back to an earlier question? How many employees do you have here in Brookline or in this area?
In the Boston market, about 190 employees, technicians, marketing folks, primarily. We have our regional office in Arlington. And one thing we're particularly proud of with Brookline is from the very beginning, we constructed, as we built the system, an iNet, an institutional network that is point-to-point, very advanced fiber, it's robust, and I know the town has used it for phone service as well as data services, in addition to distributing cable from the public access group. So I feel like we've been a partner with the town in that for all these years, and that will continue as well.
Well, you'll be happy to know that Chairman Wyszynski recently announced that people could see us on the local cable channel in high def on RCN, which they cannot on Comcast.
That's right. We don't under any pressure. I asked my guys, can we do it? And he said, yeah, we can do it.
So that dozens of people
so we did.
like to watch our meetings.
So and you can see us, they can see all our warts.
Yeah, I guess we need to go to the makeup room now.
Yeah,
I know. Be careful what you wish for. You know?
Well, Nancy, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't have to. The selectmen know that, I'm sorry, you said you have about 3,200 subscribers. Comcast certainly has the lion's share. I mean, it has, I should have looked at this. Is it 15,000?
Yeah, 15 or 16, if I recall.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a huge difference in the subscribership here. But RCN has been in the market here for many years and has been able to...
Oh, I stand corrected. The end of the year...
To the mic, Mr. Steele? 4,100.
4,100 as of 12/31/15.
Subscribers?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And you think that Comcast would have
15 or 16, if I recall.
15 or 16. So we're talking about 4 to 1, just as a background.
Right.
When we talk about the Form 394, Section 1 does ask for the proposed effective date of the closing of the transaction, which is going to assign or transfer ownership to Radiate. Radiate has answered as soon as closing conditions are satisfied. Can you explain what this means?
The principal conditions that need to be satisfied are the regulatory approvals. There's both federal regulatory approval as well as the local franchising authorities. We're actively seeking those at the FCC. The initial comment period expired without anyone filing any objections or comments on the proposed transfer. The reply comment deadline, which no one should file in because there were no initial comments, but you never know, will run next week. And after that, we expect a fairly quick turnaround from the FCC in approving it. Although we are in an election year, there will be transition of people at the end of the year. So we're hopeful to have the FCC approval by the end of the year. We're in the process of obtaining, as we are here today, approvals from the local franchising authorities, and we're required from state authorities. We've received a number of those already. Again, I think the company believes that they will get all of this taken care of and it will all be approved so that they can close in the first quarter of the year. That's being realistic, that there could be a hang-up, particularly again in an election year. We're quite pleased that no one has come in with any objections at the FCC, which would probably be the biggest delaying factor.
All right, so you're talking about the end of this year.
I think the optimistic view would be the end of this year. Probably more realistic will be sometime after the first of the year, just because there will still be some local and state authorities. The 120-day approval rule works to get us into January, I believe. So
the 120 days would fall on January 11, 2017. There could ostensibly be some period of time between that time and the closing. The question is, what would happen, let's say, if the closing does not occur till April? What would happen?
I don't believe there's any penalty or anything. Again, it's the agreement sets the deadline for closing in a flexible way. So I think there's not a risk here of the deal not being able to go through. In fact, not all of the regulatory approvals need to be obtained in order to close, just a certain percentage, and I think we're well on the way to getting there. So,
all right. So just, once the 60 days have expired, as I said, the board has another 60 days to make a decision. And if the decision is to approve, I can certainly draft something that we have to send to the DTC. Sometimes some towns would say, look, we're going to approve, but this doesn't mean that if the closing is in 2 years, it still applies, right? Because things may change radically. But that's a different issue. We had discussed the fact that the Form 394 does require that the transferee certify that it has sufficient net liquid assets on hand. This is a quote, "or available from committed resources to consummate the transaction and operate the facilities for 3 months." And Radiant states that it will have such net liquid assets. Where the 3 months came from, I don't know. Have you actually made a statement that you do have those net liquid assets? If not, I would ask you to follow up and reiterate that commitment.
yes, we do. As I mentioned, they have a revolving facility for $150 million that will become available to them upon closing for any liquidity needs, in addition to, again, the cash on hand that the systems have in their operations today. So they feel that they have more than adequate resources to continue to operate these systems, not just for 3 months, but beyond.
Okay, so I'll summarize the follow-up. Again, going back to the fourth criteria, which is whether Radiant has the requisite legal ability to operate the Brookline system under the existing renewal license. Regarding that license, number one, has Radiant reviewed the Brookline renewal license?
Yes, as part of the due diligence prior to entering into the transaction, reviewed all of the franchise agreements with all of the towns. So, yes.
Okay. Was there anything in the renewal license that Radiant believes it would be unable to comply with?
No.
All right. So Radiant is stating for the record that it will continue to comply with all the terms and conditions in its Brookline, in RCN's Brookline renewal license?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any provisions in the renewal license that Radiant considers to be commercially impracticable?
No.
Okay. Good. Going back, I just have a timing question, which is when you believe that Radiant, as the transferee, would actually assume control of the Brookline system. I assume that would be upon the closing and everything. And are you saying that you believe it would be perhaps the first quarter of 2017?
Correct.
Okay. In part one of the 394, I'm almost finished with my questions. It's asked if the merger agreement embodies the full and complete agreement between the transferor, which is Yankee, and the transferor, which is Radiant, and both Radiant and Yankee have affirmed this. However, the merger agreement in Exhibit 1 is heavily redacted. And in explaining the redactions, Yankee and Radiant stated that, quote, certain exhibits and schedules to the above purchase agreement have been redacted as they are not necessary in order to understand the terms of the purchase agreement, contain confidential trade, business, pricing, or marketing data, and are not otherwise publicly available. The question is, for the record and as a follow-up, Yankee and Radiant should certify at this point that such omitted information is not germane to the Board of Selectmen's consideration of the Form 394 transfer request.
For the record, they are not germane. They are, again, information that relates to employment matters and other matters that are not necessary for the town's consideration.
Okay, and I would just ask that that would be a follow-up in writing. Two more things.
And a follow-up, and also I think identification of each of the types of redactions that are there, so that we have some sense of what we're missing.
Sure, we can provide. We actually should be able to provide that if you want.
I mean, the redactions, it's a big agreement for a lot.
No, I understand that.
So the question would be, can you identify really the categories?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just think that when you have a document that is heavily redacted, we have an obligation to at least know what we're not seeing.
No, I agree with that, because it's hard to say. I mean, if you go in and look at it, I guess one could surmise, but I think that's a good question and a fair question.
Right. I know that. I mean, most of the redactions, the titles of the schedules that are redacted are still there, so the category is there, but we can go through and provide any additional information that we think would be helpful.
Just two more questions. In Schedule 1.1 to the purchase agreement, there is a reference to a Department of Revenue lien, and can you explain what this means?
There were a couple of permitted liens that have actually now been paid off. I think one of them related to unemployment insurance benefits. To be honest,
identified. So my final question is, if you can explain concisely to the board tonight why it should eventually approve, and in a timely manner or not, the Form 394 request to transfer control of the Brookline system from Yankee to Radiant.
again, I think it summarizes pretty much what we've said previously, but that this is a transaction, I think, that puts these systems in the hands of a committed, well-financed entity that wants to build on these systems and make them effective competitors, which we think will benefit the consumers here, both in terms of things like the upgraded internet speed, but also continuing to provide a competitive pressure on Comcast, which otherwise has no competitive alternative here in Brookline. So we think it can do that. There'll be, again, from the standpoint of consumers, transparent in that the same people will be here in Massachusetts and around the country operating these systems on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
Those are all my questions.
Any other questions from the board? This is a public hearing. Any members of the public wish to speak? I see none.
I have to say that I find underwhelming what you're saying the enhancements to this community will be. I asked a very pointed question, and I got back faster internet speeds, moving a call center back to the United States, and we're going to continue existing programs to pay for, I think, $750 of subsidy to bring service into buildings. You got to do better than that, and I would hope you would follow up with some more specifics that are more demonstrate a greater enhancement to the community than things that you're doing today or that practically you would do in the normal course of business anyway.
It may be useful to keep the record of the hearing open for 7 or 14 days to, number one, get the follow-up from Radiate, and if anybody in the public would like to submit testimony, I think it would be useful to keep the record open.
Okay.
And that would go, I think today is the 2nd, so it would go through the 16th. But are you meeting on the 16th?
We're in town meeting.
Yeah, we'll be meeting, but...
So the 16th is okay. All right.
Mr.
I will follow up and just summarize. There were about 5 follow-up questions and categories, and if anybody on the board has anything else that you would like me to add to that list, if you can let Austin know, I can forward it to Tom and Seth in a couple of days.
Mr. Fry would like to speak. So,
Can I just ask one question? Form 394, is that, I assume it's not online somewhere. It's sitting over there. Okay.
and they're available in the Selectmen's office.
Okay.
And we can provide you a copy, Selectman Green. Mr. Fry, I'm sorry.
No, not a problem. Ernie Fry, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 7. I'm listening to this. I don't know that much about what's going on, but it occurs to me that this body, you are being presented with a request to do something. And I'm wondering what are the consequences of not doing anything. And you may know the answer to that already, and if you do, I apologize for that, but that's, I'm just very, I feel like I'm in a, I feel like I'm in a car salesman.
Our outside counsel can perhaps help with that.
The question here is that the parent company that owns the local RCN franchise is selling its to somebody else.
I got that.
And so if you want to have RCN continue to operate in Brookline, which 4,000 people do, we have to approve this change on the license.
Yeah, Mr. Fry, your question is, I think, what options the selectmen have. Under federal law, the selectmen as issuing authority has 120 days, in essence, to render a decision. You don't have to do anything. And if you do nothing, then the transfer will be deemed to have been approved, at least by this body, for Brookline. Now, so you have 3 alternatives. You can affirmatively approve, and if so, there would have to be some statement that you make within the 120 days. Or, number 2, you can do nothing. And the 120 days comes and goes, and the transfer will be deemed to be approved by federal law. Or 3, you can deny. Now, if you deny, well, that would take you down a whole different route, and we would have to discuss that subsequently. But those are really the 3 alternatives that the board has.
Can I ask another question? I looked through very quickly the Form 394 and attachments, and I don't see a financial statement. Is there a reason for that? And
Well, Radiate, that was provided with the capital commitments and certain other information. Radiate is a new company, so it doesn't have a financial statement to provide. But we've provided, we've provided the capital commitments, information about the financing available to it, but it's not an operating entity. It's just being formed as part of this transaction.
So is the financial information would be TPG's financial information, not Radiant's?
Well, again, there's the information from TPG relating to the financing for Radiant is what's been provided.
Selectman Heller? And then Selectman Daley.
I have another question in a slightly different vein, because I think people like Mr. Fry and others in the community are really wondering, what is all this about, and the 4,000 people who have RCN, is it worth staying with RCN, or should we switch to Comcast? And I'm curious how RCN rates here in Brookline compare with those in, say, Jamaica Plain.
Our rates are pretty much uniform, and the impact in the last few years has been with increases in programming costs. And they've been reflected on our bills as denoted surcharges to show where the money that we're passing through to the customers is going. We're not actually getting that as profit, but rather we're passing it through to broadcasters who charge us for retransmission consent, programmers who charge us for their programming, sports programmers, for instance, and the like. But our rates are pretty much uniform throughout the system. So Brookline's and Boston's are the same.
Selectman Daley?
Yeah, I was going to just suggest that we condition our vote on Mr. Epstein receiving the answers to.
Yeah, I wasn't going to call for a vote tonight.
Okay.
So we'll have a vote after we.
I will. There are about five. There are 5 follow-ups, and I will summarize those in writing, and I can run them by the town before I send them, and then I would ask Radiant and RCN if it would get back to me within, say, a week, and then I can convey that to the town. That would be part of the record. And I had asked Austin if he could also just get me, as you know, this hearing was noticed as required twice prior to was in the tab. Okay, so we'll just make that part of the record as well. So if the board has any subsequent questions, by all means, feel free to ask, and I can wait a day or two so you have time to consider that, because you've had some good questions. Can I ask them in other hearings, sir?
Pardon me?
Can I ask your questions in subsequent hearings?
You pay a license fee. Let me ask one other question. I mean, I'm not suggesting that this is not a good deal for the town. I am concerned with the process, though, that we are asked to approve something eventually based on financial information that are one-page certifications, and in the main body of the Form 394, you have a balance sheet, but most of it is redacted. So I guess my question is, what are we basing our approval of the finances of this company on? Not suggesting that there's a problem here, but the process seems to be, or seems to have something missing.
Again, I think we believe that we provided the information required by federal law. We certainly will look through this.
Okay,
if there's,
well, provided
I'm just,
by federal law
I
doesn't
understand.
really help me.
But let me, because again, in these transactions, certain information is by FCC standard and rule allowed to be kept redacted and kept confidential if it's not generally public available. I understand the situation that you feel you're put in, that you're relying on the information that's provided. There are things redacted. We believe the information that's not redacted still provides you with the information needed to determine that the financial qualifications are met of the purchasing entity. But
I guess
follow up with Mr. Epstein on that.
I'll just mention that, one important statement is the statement of cash flows, and that's just black marks.
That would be cash flow of the existing entity. Now, again, our Radiate doesn't have cash flow. It doesn't have any asset at the moment. It's acquiring its asset. So, again, we're not sure that would provide you with information relating to the going forward purchase.
So I believe RCN is currently has a case before the Appellate Tax Board of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts regarding the fair cash value of its property, its personal property. I'm wondering what your plans are to continue to pursue that litigation, or are you going to drop it as a part of this transfer of license?
This process is designed to assess the financial, technical, and legal character of the company that's purchasing the system, in this case, Brookline. It isn't designed to encourage enhancements, to have a renegotiation of a license or anything like that. And in the case of litigation, I know that's been going on for a number of years, and it includes Newton, I think, as well. And I don't expect that will do anything except continue on.
Well, I appreciate your comments about the process, but in the letter that was sent to our chair, you say, and I'm quoting here, both companies believe that the transaction offers tremendous prospects for continued enhancements to the system and service available to cable customers in the town of Brookline. I've now asked a question twice about what the enhancements to the town of Brookline are going to be. I am searching very hard for how we're going to benefit. And one of the things that you've listed in this this filing is the case before the Appellate Tax Board. I'm looking for some benefit to the town, not just the shareholders of TPG.
One of the, if you want to look at the character of RCN, you can look to what we did on our own without the pressure of a renewal license to bring HD programming to the Brookline local programming. You can look askance at it, but we've done the same with the INET. When we assist the INET, we give technical advice for websites and things I don't understand, like static domains and things that I think we've been a very good partner to the town, and we'll continue to be a good partner. Verizon in their communities, Comcast in this community flatly refuses to do HD programming. We're willing to expand beyond 1 to 2 to 3 channels. We invest in customer service. We invest in our product. We try new approaches. A lot of people are so-called cutting the cord. So we'll offer a package that allows you to get high-speed internet access at a cost, and try to package programming that you might like in a different way than you have to get the whole bundle or nothing. You're always trying to do something in a competitive environment when you're the size of a company like RCN to keep yourself competitive and to offer as much choice as we can to our customers. We've been responsive. When Austin will call, and Melissa before him, we go out, we do surveys, we try to reach, we have reached customers in ways that are innovative and imaginative, but some customers we just can't reach. So, I'm just telling you that we're a smaller company. We do all we can. We work hard, and I'm not sure what the future holds, but we're always changing and developing, particularly in the area of broadband access. Now, when you get a gig, you say, well, the rate's going up. Well, it's not so much that the rates are going up, but when you have an enhanced product, it'll come at a certain rate. So we'll see what that rate will be.
If I could just add one other sort of taking this different angle. One of the benefits here, when a company decides to exit, as ABRI has decided, there are a variety of outcomes. They can exit and go out of business, and there can be no service at all. They can exit by selling. Sometimes they will try to sell to another provider in the same community, in which case there's a reduction in competition. Or they will sell to another established operator And typically that ends up bringing in a great deal of disruption for consumers as billing systems and management from another entity comes in and comes on board. And I've been through a number of those types of transactions where they can be very disruptive. I think this transaction where an entity is coming in with deeper pockets to continue the operations here, to build on what's here, with no disruption to the consumers, with no loss of competition, I think starting with that point provides benefit alone. I think what the goal to do to be an effective competitor to Comcast will continue to have them make investments as the market evolves and technology evolves, and they continue as they are doing with DOCSIS 3.1, looking for ways to stay ahead of the curve and put pressure on Comcast to catch up with them in the future. So I just would ask that you consider it from that angle as well. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll vote this another night after Mr. Epstein.
Yeah, you want to get, you certainly want to receive all of the follow-up, and as I mentioned, if anybody out in the audience has questions, then the record would be kept open for 2 weeks. Right now, I've written down 8 follow-up questions, and again, may be useful if I can send that to Austin tomorrow and he can circulate it to the board. And if you want to add to that, if you want to correct what I've done, that would be fine, because I think if we can then send this out in a few days, that would be good, because the board has had some good questions. And I would ask, as one of those follow-ups, for example, if RCN and Radiant could explain that statement in the cover letter that Selectman Franco asked about. So I'll do that. I'll try to do that tomorrow or Thursday, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to warrant articles, and we're going to skip over 22. The folks,
they're down with the advisory committee.
right?
22.
And I've been corresponding with Mr. Benka. They're finishing up 22. So we'll come back, and I see Mr. Fry is here for Article 28. So let's do that.
Okay, before we, you should have in your packet the advisory committee's write-up for Article 28. I believe that Mr. Fry is still supporting the board's motion under this article, but he can give you his rationale when you're ready to hear from him as well.
So where are we? How do we differ?
So there's a nice chart that is provided as part of the write-up that shows the difference between the original warrant article, where the Board of Selectmen is, and where the advisory committee is right now.
So the Board of Selectmen's language, where the renewal application must be submitted by a date certain, provides the commission with the certainty of knowing whether or not a commissioner is going to continue, which was the problem they were trying to solve. And the advisory committee's language doesn't solve the problem.
I believe the issue that also is around the consequence of denial of application as well, where I think sometimes the board will make these appointments in September and October, and Ernie just explained to me that with the term expiring in August, it's kind of retroactive. I think that's the issue.
But the advisory committee version says term expires August 31st. But they're saying lack of action by the Board of Selectmen means term extended. So aren't those two inconsistent? I don't get it. Oh, that's a consequence of denial.
I think that's Ernie's point.
Okay.
So it seems to me, I kind of like our language. we should stick to our guns and just be prepared to explain it to town meeting in a way that they'll understand it. And, okay. So I will not move to reconsider unless somebody else wants to. And I see no one wishing to reconsider.
As usual, I like our language.
Right. Okay, so that resolves that.
Okay.
So,
Move on to Article 15, is that?
yeah,
how
let's
you're
do the
looking at
easy
it?
one.
Okay, so Article 15, the only difference was the title of the bylaw was changed by the advisory committee.
Seriously?
Yes. So if you turn to page 16.2 of your packet, you'll see that now their motion is to have the Article 8.20 as sales in public places instead of soliciting money. So we would need you to take a vote if you would want to be in line with the advisory committee.
We're not going to have a floor fight over the...
I think the moderator would be happy with agreement on minor issues.
Yeah, I can go with sales in public places.
Yeah, really. So I will move reconsideration of Article 15. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
I will move that we accept the advisory committee changes in the title of the article. You've got to be kidding. All those in favor, please
Yes,
say.
I think you should be clear that it's the general bylaw, Article 8.20, that we're...
As shown on
Just
page
advisory committee
16.2 of our
motion.
packet.
And by the way, I just make a note, I don't think it's significant, but in the first line of the body of the article, there's also a change to take out solicit money.
Right, that was part of your previous vote. So if you just vote on the advisory committee motion, that kind of resolves it both.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to accept the advisory committee language, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Let me just let the folks downstairs know that we're getting ready for them.
They're here.
Okay. Okay, so let's,
So you want to skip 24, or do you want to?
yeah, why don't we do 22?
Well, Mike Yanovich is on his way up also.
So why don't we do 24?
So 24, I think by the time we had the new language proposed by the moderators committee on leaf blowers, it was very late in the evening, and the board wanted some more time to consider this new motion. The full advisory committee has not taken action on this yet either, but the board has the choice as to whether or not they want to do something with this revision or stay with their current motion, which currently is no action.
Or should we, or the other option is to wait for the advisory committee wordsmithing?
It's up to the board.
We did receive a correspondence from town meeting member Andy Fisher expressing opposition to this change. He seemed, if I understand his objection, he seemed to be arguing that shifting the enforcement to the DPW would hurt enforcement of the bylaw, but I think the intent is to enhance enforcement. It's not taking the enforcement away from the police department, but is adding personnel from DPW who's right to manage and coordinate. And
Yeah, you know, well, I don't know. I mean,
Well, maybe that should be made clear in the...
well, I think it is. Whereas the police, So it started out, whereas the police department is currently the sole enforcer, now it's going to say it's the primary enforcer. And then we're resolving that department, DPW, have the additional duties. So we're not taking enforcement away from the police department. We're adding the DPW.
This does talk about, though, modest added expense for DPW to take this on. I don't know. I feel like we have many warrant articles that are adding in all of our departments. You know, we've had a number in health and elsewhere. And I'm concerned about constantly adding enforcement obligations in different departments. And I believe now, under the current bylaw, you can call DPW, can't you?
They do currently provide enforcement.
Yeah, so
But they don't come out. The intent here is to use one of the sanitation inspectors who has got a car.
I think we have to be very careful about adding, you know, we have the police department there, and without incurring sort of additional expense, they can swing by when they get a complaint. There's a lot of them, whereas, you know, we're talking about one person here in DPW. To me, it makes sense to kind of leave it the way it is. I mean, DPW can respond, but I don't think we should be switching the sort of primary enforcement to DPW.
In the near term, our environmental enforcement officers are going to be probably pretty busy as we presumably transfer to pay-as-you-throw at some point in the future. When that point may be, I'm clear about. But I have no problem with DPW taking on some education responsibilities. Again, I chaired a committee on leaf blowers, and one of the things that we heard both from the police themselves and also from others who came to share their views with us is that often the police end up showing up regardless of who the first responder is, the first town department or official to show up, because people don't view DPW as a legitimate enforcer of the leaf bylaw, and things get heated and contested, and the police end up having to show up to sort things out, so to speak.
Well, wait a minute. Maybe I'm missing something here, but this article is written as DPW calling on the police department for enforcement, doing enforcement.
Yeah, maybe I could just help clarify. So we are also concerned about this sort of creep, enforcement creep, but you know, we did want to work with the good faith efforts of the committee, and in particular the petitioner and I forget Faith's last name, but Faith Michaels, who has been working really hard at doing some of this work on her own time. I was very opposed to any of the removing the police as a enforcer, and for the reasons you stated. We would like to cooperate. Frankly, I don't think it's necessary to have a resolution, and I expressed that to the petitioner, but they felt very strongly that they needed to have something, and this was the result of that. I can't say I'm opposed necessarily to it, but I do think that whenever there's a resolution in this community, there creates expectations. It's written down, and there's expectations that I'm afraid of, to be honest with you, that what we offer will never be enough, and we'll be consistently asked, well, why didn't you do number 3 or whatever. But we want to be helpful, and maybe that's our problem. We try to be as helpful as we can.
I think DPW does have, under the current bylaw, I think they're one of the enforcing.
Yes, they are.
Agencies. That's good enough for me. I think the police should be the primary point people on this anyway. I'm not supportive of adding additional expenses and responsibilities to a DPW person.
I agree.
Okay. So, do we have a vote on this already?
No action.
So currently, your position is no action. This was before any modifications to the
Okay,
original.
so we can just not reconsider? Okay. So we will be prepared to defend that position. Okay. Selectman Daley.
That reminds me, I do need to get you your committee assignments. We can talk about how I did with
Yeah, actually, that would be a good idea, so we can start thinking about that.
Yeah.
Who's going to speak to that?
It's about 7 apiece. So.
And Selectman Daley, you put her on 24.
Yep. Okay. Will do. Thank you.
I'll volunteer for the 5 River Road articles.
Okay, let's, Article 22. Mr. Benka, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Dick Benka, Chair of the Moderators Committee on Zoning, FAR. Let me just ask, did you receive the preliminary draft of the advisory committee's position?
We have something here.
There's something that says October 25 changes.
Okay.
AC planning regulations.
Okay. Let me just tell you what the advisory committee did as a starting point. The advisory committee voted favorable action on the article by a vote of 18 to 0 to 2 abstentions.
Really? Congratulations.
Yes. Actually, today here, Mike Yanovich from the building department is here, Polly Selko from the Department of Planning and Community Development, Angela Hyatt, who chaired the Planning and Regulations Subcommittee of the Advisory Committee, is also here. The changes from the original article as proposed that the Advisory Committee voted, in capital A, where there's the small paragraph N, if you have that, they inserted the words newly constructed between any construction of and the word space. So it would be any construction of newly created space as clarifying language. That's going to be subject to just running it past the moderator, and I'd also like to run it past town council. But that was voted by them subject to those conditions.
Could I ask you a question?
Yes.
Does that mean that somebody who's lived in their house for 20 years and the house has been there for, 50 years and it has a basement and they want to do something?
They want to finish it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that doesn't count.
This is, that was the original intent, and this is intended to clarify that it's not intended to capture that.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, when you reduce it, though,
Holly.
150.
Right. Well, we'll get.
That's a different question.
We'll get
All
to.
right, yeah.
But in terms of that provision, if you go to the bold paragraph C to amend section 5.094C, do we have that?
It's on page 15-2.
I'm sorry, I don't have your pagination.
Right.
But it's the paragraph that begins relation of buildings to the form of the streetscape.
Yes.
Where the words footprint and siting appear, which is in 3 locations, the words footprint and siting were deleted by the advisory committee.
Right, that's...
We already have that.
Okay, good. And then down in D, and you already have this, they took out concurrently or subsequently. Okay. And then finally, and I don't know in what form you have this, the initial vote of the subcommittee under paragraph E, which would be probably on your next page.
Big E.
Big E, then 2B, the last paragraph under Big E before Big F. That 150%, the advisory committee voted to reduce to 130%.
And that's the existing...
That is the existing and that is presently, under the existing bylaw, attics and basements can be converted and made habitable up to 150% of FAR for single and two-family homes. This would reduce that potential conversion to 130%.
Okay, the version we have, though, had 150% crossed out, 130%, which is crossed out, and then it has 150%.
Right. The advisory, the subcommittee had first recommended staying at 150%. It had been changed. The original draft changed it from 150 to 130. The subcommittee left it at 150. The advisory committee today, the full advisory committee and the subcommittee on reconsideration voted to reduce that 150
So what,
to 130.
What's the impact? What's the practical impact of that?
I'll let Mike and Polly speak to this, but the impact would be that, first of all, the goal in the reduction is that it would discourage new construction with attics and basements at 150% of FAR, because they would know that the legal conversion down the road would be limited to 130% of FAR.
But how about for existing properties?
For existing properties, it would reduce their ability to convert existing attics and basements. If they had the 150% potential there, it would reduce that to 130%, and it would conceivably make some properties non-conforming. And the number would be maximum about 6% of the single-family homes might become non-conforming, with a reduction from 150 to 130%.
So is the...
So the intent is to discourage
The initial overbuilding
now.
It's another step along with the special permit requirement to discourage the overbuilding. It was originally proposed by the Department of Planning and Community Development as a step to take. On this particular issue, the Moderators Committee was not unanimous. The Moderators Committee split on this issue of whether it should be kept at 150 or it should be reduced to 130.
Is it really worth? So if you have an existing basement that would, if you finish the whole basement, and that would bring you to the 150, for example. There's going to be no impact on the massing, it's just using the internal space. What this does is it'll only allow you to finish a portion of the basement.
And I think the original goal of the planning department was to discourage the large initial construction.
Yeah. But then you take it has the unintended consequence of.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where the advisory committee was.
I have a question for Mr. Yanovich.
Yes.
So in Part A to N, you were concerned about enforcement, and I tried to provide you with a definition of substantially, which I understand you didn't like my wording. But so are you now comfortable that you can enforce without any definition?
I think it's not necessarily the wording as much as it is the form and the intent of that particular section. I'm not sure there is any clarification that can assist us with enforcement at this point. So, as I said to Dick, and I think I said to this body last time I was here, is we'll take the hand dealt and we will enforce based on the intent of the article, and we'll let the chips fall where they may after this hits the street, so to speak.
Okay. All right.
Good answer. You have something?
I'm just going to speak in favor of going with the advisory committee language. I think this is our third attempt trying to do this. I want to take the opportunity to compliment Mr. Benka and Mr. Selwyn, who I know were two of the most involved parties in this most recent effort and have been focused on this issue for the past few years. And I think we've thoroughly vetted this. The committee has thoroughly vetted this, and I'm comfortable giving this the old college try for the.
And if this doesn't work,
What is?
3 strikes and you're out, I guess.
We can rewrite the whole bylaw, zoning bylaw.
Yeah, right. I wish the advisory committee went with the 150, but I'm just thinking, is that...
I'm not willing to have a floor fight.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Try explaining that at the town meeting. And, so I'm willing to go along with the advisory committee revisions and thank them for vetting this in the way they did. So we ready for a motion? So I'll move the advisory committee language on Article 22. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. Chair votes aye. Thank you. So do we have anything else? Let's go. Okay, so I think we finished our business for tonight. Thank you. That was quick.
Now we see what